Audio 7.3 Personal and Environmental Factors Affecting Learning. Situation 23 Designing a 21st Century Learning Space. Your school has received a grant to redesign a traditional 30-year-old library into a modern learning commons. The current space is silent with fixed heavy tables and shelves that create a rigid, uninviting atmosphere. Your vision is to create a flexible, dynamic space that supports diverse learning activities. As principal, describe your plan for this transformation. Number A. How would you incorporate modular furniture and flexible seating to move beyond the fixed desk model? Number B. Explain how you would create and utilize breakout spaces within the new learning commons. My plan is to transform the traditional library into a vibrant, multifunctional learning commons that serves as the intellectual hub of the school, catering to individual study, collaboration, and innovation. Number A. To move beyond the fixed desk model, I would procure lightweight modular furniture that can be easily reconfigured. This would include tables of different shapes and heights, comfortable soft seating like bean bags and couches, and individual study carrels. This flexible seating approach empowers students to choose a space that suits their learning, task, and personal preference, be it a quiet corner for focused reading, a large table for group projects, or a comfortable chair for casual browsing. This adaptability supports a variety of pedagogical approaches and acknowledges that learning is not a static activity. Number B. Breakout spaces would be designated zones within the learning commons designed for specific purposes. I would create small semi-enclosed areas using glass partitions or movable whiteboards for small group discussions and collaborative work. These spaces would be equipped with technology like shared monitors. They allow groups to work together without disturbing those engaged in silent study. I would also designate a makerspace corner with resources for hands-on projects and on outdoor learning PTO, extending the learning environment and providing diverse setting for engagement. Situation 24. Explain the concept of breakout spaces in the context of designing flexible learning environments in modern schools. Breakout spaces are small, designated areas within or adjacent to a larger learning environment, such as a classroom or library, designed to support small group work, collaboration, or quite focused individual tasks. They represent a deliberate move away from the traditional single room model where all activities happen in the same large group setting. These spaces can be created using modular furniture, movable partitions, glass walls, or even distinct zones with different types of seating and acoustic properties. The fundamental purpose is to provide flexibility and choice in how and where learning takes place. In a modern school, breakout spaces allow a teacher to differentiate instruction effectively. For example, while one group of students works on a collaborative project in a breakout space equipped with a whiteboard. Another group might be engaged in peer tutoring in a second space, while the rest of the class works independently in the main area. These spaces facilitate student-centered learning, foster communication and teamwork skills, and help manage noise and activity levels, creating a more dynamic and productive learning environment that can cater to multiple needs simultaneously. Situation 25. Time is a critical and finite resource in education. Number A. Define time on task and explain its correlation with student achievement. Number B. How can a school principal use the concept of circadian rhythm to design a more effective school timetable? The management of time, both in terms of quantity and quality, is a significant factor affecting the learning outcomes within a school. Number A. Time on task refers to the actual amount of time students are actively engaged in learning activities as opposed to the total allocated instructional time. It is the time spent listening, participating, and working on academic tasks, excluding time lost to classroom management, transitions, or distractions. Research consistently shows a strong positive correlation between time on task and student achievement. The more actively engaged learning time a student has, the more likely they are to master concepts and skills. Effective classroom management is therefore crucial to maximize this valuable time. Number B. Circadian rhythms are the natural internal 24-hour cycles of sleep and wakefulness that affect alertness and cognitive performance. For most adolescents, these rhythms shift, making them more alert later in the morning. A principal can use this knowledge to design a more brain friendly timetable. For instance, subjects that require high order thinking, abstract reasoning, and intense concentration, like mathematics or physics, could be scheduled during mid morning hours, exemplarity at 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., when students are typically at their peak cognitive performance, rather than in the first period when many may still be groggy. Situation 26. The academic committee of a Navodaya Vidyalaya is debating a change in the school's timetable structure. The current system uses 8 short periods of 40 minutes each. A proposal has been made to shift to a block scheduling system with 4 longer periods of 80 minutes each day. Some teachers are enthusiastic, believing it will allow for more in depth activities, while others are concerned about maintaining student attention for such a long duration. As the principal chairing this committee, evaluate the proposed shift from a pedagogical standpoint. What are the potential benefits of block scheduling for student learning, and what new demands would it place on teachers' instructional strategies? The proposal to shift from short periods to block scheduling represents a significant pedagogical change with both potential benefits and challenges. From a pedagogical standpoint, the primary benefit of an 80-minute block is the opportunity for deeper, more varied instruction. It moves beyond the constraints of a rushed lecture and recap format. Teachers can plan a multi-stage lesson that might include direct instruction, a collaborative group activity, hands-on experimentation, and individual reflection, all within a single period. This allows for project-based learning and performance tasks that are not feasible in a 40-minute time frame. However, this shift places significant new demands on teachers. A longer period cannot be a prolonged lecture, which would lead to student disengagement and fatigue. Teachers should require professional development on how to structure a block period effectively, breaking it into smaller, varied segments. Example criteria: a 15-minute mini lesson, a 40-minute activity, a 15-minute discussion, and a 10-minute wrap up. They must become adept at planning for multiple activities and transitions within one class, managing student engagement over a longer duration, and using a wider repertoire of students repertoire of student-centered instructional strategies. Situation 27. Assessment practices can profoundly influence how and what students learn. Number A. Explain the washback effect of examinations on student study habits. Number B. Discuss the potential negative impact of high-stake testing on student cognitive and emotional well-being. Number C. How does the nature of feedback, exemplarity, corrective versus judgmental, act as a factor in learning? Answer. Assessment is not merely a tool for measurement. It is an active factor that shapes the entire learning ecosystem from student motivation to teaching practices. Number A. The washback effect or backwash refers to the influence that testing has on teaching and learning. If an examination primarily test rote memorization of facts, then teachers will tend to teach in a way that emphasizes memorization, and students will adopt study habits focused on cramming facts. Conversely, if an exam requires critical thinking and application, it encourages teachers to use more analytical pedagogical approaches and students to study for deeper understanding. The nature of the exam dictates the nature of the learning. Number B. High stakes testing, where a single test has significant consequences like promotion or admission, can have severe negative impacts. It can lead to immense stress and anxiety, potentially triggering cognitive burnout and mental health issues. The pressure can cause teaching to the test, narrowing the curriculum to only what is tested, and stifling creativity and holistic development. For students, the fear of failure can inhibit risk taking and lead to surface level learning strategies instead of genuine inquiry. Number C. Feedback is a PowerPoint learning tool, but its nature is critical. Judgmental feedback, such as this is wrong or poor work, can be demotivating and damage a student's self esteem. In contrast, corrective and encouraging feedback, such as you have used the formula correctly here, but let's recheck the calculation, or this is a good start, now try to add more specific examples, is far more effective. It identifies the error, shows how to improve, and maintains the student's motivation and belief in their ability to succeed. Situation 28. Critically analyze the role of feedback as a factor affecting learning, distinguishing between feedback that is merely judgmental and feedback that is corrective and encouraging. Feedback is one of the most powerful influences on student achievement, but its effectiveness is entirely dependent on its quality and delivery. Judgmental feedback, which focuses on evaluating the person or the final product with labels like good, bad, or careless, is often counterproductive. It can be perceived as a personal criticism, leading to defensiveness, decreased motivation, and reluctance to attempt challenging tasks in the future for fear of similar judgment. It tells the student that they have failed but provides no clear path forward for improvement. In stark, in stark contrast, feedback that is corrective and encouraging is task focused, specific, and forward looking. Corrective feedback identifies specific errors and provides clear guidance on how to fix them. Exempli gratia, your argument is strong, but it needs to be supported by evidence from the text. Encouraging feedback acknowledges effort and progress, fostering a growth mindset. This combination builds student self-efficacy, demystifies the learning process, and transforms mistakes into valuable learning opportunities, thereby directly and positively affecting future learning and engagement. Situation 29, Leading Digital Transformation. As the newly appointed principal of a Kendriya Vidyalaya in a semi-urban area, you inherit a school with outdated technological infrastructure. There are a few computers, no reliable internet in classrooms, and no smart boards. Teachers primarily use the chalk and talk method. The VMC had sanctioned a limited one-time grant for technological upgrades. Develop a, develop a strategic plan for this digital transformation. Number A. How would you prioritize the spending of the limited grant to ensure maximum impact on learning? Number B. What steps would you take to ensure teachers are trained and willing to integrate the new technology, moving beyond chalk and talk? Number C. How would you address the need for assistive technology for inclusive learning within your plan? My strategic plan would prioritize sustainable and equitable integration of technology, focusing on pedagogy first and hardware second to ensure the limited grant yields maximum long-term impact. Number A. I would prioritize foundational infrastructure over fancy gadgets. The first priority would be to ensure reliable, high speed internet connectivity across the entire campus, as this is the backbone of all modern educational technology. Secondly, instead of putting a smart board in every class, I would equip a smaller number of classrooms, perhaps one per department, as tech-enabled rooms with a smart board, projector, and speakers, which can be shared by teachers. This creates centers of excellence and allows for a more phased and manageable rollout. Number B. To ensure teacher buy-in, I would adopt a train the trainer model. I would identify tech savvy, enthusiastic teachers, provide them with intensive training, and designate them as tech mentors. Tech mentors. They would then conduct hands on subject specific workshops for their peers, demonstrating practical classroom applications rather than just technical features. I would also encourage and reward small scale experimentation, creating a culture where teachers feel safe to try new tools without fear of failure. Number C. Within the budget, I would allocate a specific portion for assistive technology based on a needs assessment of students with disabilities. This might include procuring screen reading software for visually impaired students, text to speech applications for students with dyslexia, or alternative keyboards. The focus would be on providing tools that grant access to the curriculum, ensuring that the digital transformation promotes inclusion rather than widening the learning gap. Situation 30. Discuss the role of modern technology infrastructure as a factor affecting student learning. Number A. How can assistive technology promote inclusive learning in a KBS or NBS setting? Number B. Explain the psychological principle behind gamification and its impact on student engagement. Modern technological infrastructure has become a critical environmental factor that can significantly enhance or limit learning opportunities and student engagement in schools. Number A. Assistive technology (AT) refers to any device, software, or equipment that helps people with disabilities work around their challenges. In a diverse KBS NBS setting, AT is cornerstone of inclusive learning. For a visually impaired student, screen reading software makes digital text accessible. For a student with dyslexia, text-to-speech tools can aid comprehension. For a student with a motor disability, an alternative keyboard or voice-to-text software can enable them to complete written assignments. It assistant technology levels the playing field, removing barriers to the curriculum and allowing students with disabilities to learn alongside their peers. Number B. Gamification is the application of game design elements like points, badges, leaderboards, and quests to non-game contexts such as classroom learning. The psychological principle behind it is do- dopamine-driven learning, achieving goals and receiving rewards in a game-like structure releases dopamine in the brain, creating feelings of pleasure and satisfaction. This reinforces the desired behavior, exemplary criteria, completing assignments, mastering a skill, and increases motivation and engagement. By turning learning into a fun and rewarding challenge, gamification can boost student participation, persistence, and retention of information. 31. Situation 31. Explain metacognitive awareness and illustrate its importance for long-term academic success with a relevant example. Metacognitive awareness, often described as thinking about one's own thinking, is a high order cognitive skill that involves understanding, monitoring, and regulating one's own learning process. It is the ability of students to be conscious of what they know and what they don't know, to set learning goals, to select appropriate strategies to meet those goals, and to evaluate their progress. It is not just about having knowledge, but about knowing how to acquire and use that knowledge effectively. It is the foundation of becoming an independent, self directed learner. Its importance for long term academic success is immense. For example, a student with high metacognitive awareness, when faced with a difficult textbook chapter, doesn't just passively reread it. They might first skim the headings to get an overview planning. Then, as they read, they might pause to summarize paragraphs in their own words, monitoring comprehension. And if they don't understand a concept, they might decide to watch a video on it or ask the teacher a specific question. Strategy selection. This active strategic approach to learning is far more effective than passive studying and is a key differentiator for success in higher education and beyond. Situation 32. A student lacking self-regulation. Anjali, a bright class 11 student, consistently fails to submit her projects on time. Her teachers report that she understands the concept well in class but seems unable to manage long term assignments. She often starts her works the night before the deadline, gets overwhelmed, and submits incomplete or poor quality work. She expresses frustration, stating, I know that to do, I know what to do, but I just can't make myself do it until the last minute. From the perspective of metacognition, analyze Anjali's problem, what specific study skills and self-regulation techniques could a school counselor or teacher introduce to help her overcome this challenge? Anjali's problem is a classic example of a gap between cognitive ability and metacognitive skills, specifically in the area of self-regulation. While the possesses the content knowledge, I know what to do, she lacks the ability to plan, monitor, and control her learning behavior over time. Her last minute approach indicates a failure in executive functions like task initiation, time management, and emotional regulation, managing the feeling of being overwhelmed. Her issue is not a lack of intelligence but a lack of how to learn strategies for long term projects. A counselor could teach her a specific self regulation techniques. First is task decomposition, breaking the large project into small, manageable subtasks. Example criteria: week 1, week 1 research, week 2 outline, week 3 draft section. 1. Second is creating a concrete schedule with self-imposed deadlines for each subtask. Third is the Pomodoro technique. Working is in focused 25 minutes intervals to combat procrastination and build momentum. Finally, teaching her self-monitoring strategies like a simple checklist to track progress can provide a sense of accomplishment and make the overall task seem less daunting, thereby improving her ability to manage her learning effectively. Situation 33. Effective classroom management is a prerequisite for learning. Number A. Distinguish between a proactive and a reactive approach to classroom management. Number B. Explain why a proactive approach is considered more effective for creating a positive learning environment. Classroom management approaches can be broadly categorized as either proactive or reactive, with each creating a vastly different classroom climate and impact on learning. Number A reactive approach to classroom management involves dealing with misbehavior after it has occurred. The teacher's focus is on responding to disruptions with warnings, punishments, or other consequences. This style is characterized by constantly putting out fires. A proactive approach, in contrast, focuses on preventing misbehavior before it starts. The teacher invests time in establishing clear expectations, teaching routines and procedures, building positive relationships with students, and creating engaging well-paced lessons that keep students on task and motivated. Number B, a proactive approach is more effective because it creates a predictable, safe, and positive learning environment where students know what is expected of them. By preventing most behavior, it maximizes time on task and minimizes disruptions to the flow of learning. It builds a culture of mutual respect rather than one based on fear and control. This positive climate encourages academic risk taking and collaboration, whereas a constantly reactive environment can create anxiety and a negative teacher student dynamic, which are detrimental to the learning process. Situation 34. Analyze the potential negative impact of a consistently punitive discipline system on student risk taking and creativity within the learning environment. A consistently punitive discipline system which relies heavily on punishment, fear, and rigid control to manage student behavior can have a deeply corrosive effect on the learning environment. Such a system conditions students to prioritize compliance and avoidance of punishment above all else. The primary goal for a student becomes not to learn but to not get into trouble. This creates a climate of fear and anxiety, which is antithetical to the psychological safety required for genuine intellectual exploration. The most significant negative impact is on academic risk taking and creativity. Creativity flourishes in an environment where experimentation and failure are seen as part of the process. In a punitive system, making a mistake, asking a wrong question, or proposing an unconventional idea carries the risk of negative consequences such as ridicule or punishment. Students learn to play it safe, providing only the expected answers and avoiding any risk and avoiding any task where success is not guaranteed. This stifles curiosity, discourages critical thinking, and trains students to be passive recipients of information rather than active creative learners. Situation 35. A principal's leadership in fostering a conducive learning environment. As the principal of a large Kendriya Vidyalaya, you have access to school data that indicates several interconnected problems. High student absenteeism in certain classes, low scores in subjects scheduled post lunch, and teacher feedback about student disengagement. You suspect that various personal and environmental factors are at play, but the school's approach has been largely reactive based on the principles of leadership oversight. Number A. Describe a proactive data driven step you would take to identify the root causes of these issues. Number B. Outline a plan to train your teachers to recognize and mitigate the negative learning factors they observe in their classrooms. As principal, a proactive and holistic approach is essential to move from reacting to symptoms to addressing the root causes of these learning related issues. Number A. My first step would be to triangulate data to identify patterns. I would cross-reference absenteeism data with student demographics, academic performance, and the specific subjects teachers involved. I would also introduce short anonymous student surveys to gather qualitative data on factors like classroom environment, teacher student rapport, and perceived subject difficulty. Further, I would conduct non-evaluative classroom observations, particularly in post-lunch sessions, to analyze factors like instructional strategies, classroom temperature, and student engagement levels. This multifaceted data collection would help pinpoint the specific negative factors at play. Number B. By training, plan for teachers would be centered on building their capacity as classroom diagnosticians. I would organize workshops focused on understanding key learning factors such as the impact of motivation, cognitive load, and the physical environment. Teachers would be trained to use simple diagnostic tools like exit tickets and observation checklists. The training would emphasize practical, low effort strategies they can use to mitigate negative factors such as incorporating brain breaks, using varied instructional methods to maintain engagement, and building positive relationships to reduce anxiety. Situation 36. A school principal's leadership is crucial in managing the diverse factors that affect learning. Number A. How can a principal's strategic allocation of the school budget support the creation of a conducive learning environment? Number B. What is the principal's role in training teachers to recognize and mitigate negative learning factors within their classrooms? The principal acts as the chief architect of the school's learning environment, using both financial and human resources to create conditions optimal for student success. Number A. A principal's strategic budget allocation is a powerful tool for creating a conducive learning environment. Instead of solely focusing on routine expenses. A forward thinking principal can allocate funds to directly address negative learning factors. This could include budgeting for ergonomic furniture to improve student comfort and focus, investing in better lighting and ventilation systems, purchasing assistive technologies for inclusive education, funding a robust library with diverse reading materials, or creating flexible learning spaces. By prioritizing spending on the physical and technological architecture of learning, the principal makes a tangible investment in student well-being and engagement. Number B. The principal role extends beyond infrastructure to human capital. It is their responsibility to ensure teachers are equipped to manage learning factors. This involves organizing and funding continuous professional development (CPD), continuous professional development focused on topics like differentiated instruction, managing cognitive load, understanding the impact of socioeconomic factors, and creating a positive classroom climate. The principal must foster a culture of professional inquiry, encouraging teachers to observe each other, discuss challenges, and collaboratively develop strategies to recognize and mitigate barriers to learning, transforming them from mere instructors into responsive pedagogical experts. Situation 37. Explain the concept of components of an early warning system (EWS) in the context of identifying at-risk students. Number A. What is the purpose of an EWS in a school setting? Number B. What are the typical behavioral and academic data points used in such a system? Number C. Why is an EWS considered a proactive rather than a reactive strategy? In early warning system, EWS is a structured, data-driven approach used by schools to proactively identify students who are at risk of academic failure or dropping out. Number A. The primary purpose of an EWS is to provide timely and, targeted support to struggling students before their problems become insurmountable. Instead of waiting for a student to fail a major exam or be on the verge of dropping out, the system uses current data to flag potential issues, allowing counselors, teachers, and administrators to intervene with appropriate academic, behavioral, or social emotional support. Number B. EWS typically rely on easily accessible data points, often remembered by the acronym ABC: attendance, chronic absenteeism, tardiness, behavior, disciplinary incidents, classroom disengagement, social withdrawal, and course performance, failing grades in core subjects, missed assignments. Combining these indicators provides a more reliable picture of a student's risk level than any single measure alone. Number C. In EWS is considered proactive because it is a predictive, not just diagnostic. It uses leading indicators like a sudden drop in attendance to forecast a future problem like course failure and trigger an intervention. Reactive strategies, in contrast, would only address the problem after the failure has already occurred. The EWS allows the school to act preventatively, offering support at the first sign of trouble. Situation 38. Using data for sudden support. As the head of schools,